Ukraine. The gates of Europe, as well, described by Serhiy Plokhy, kind of, because we do defend Europe through our history from any sort of invasion from the East. But then also, those same gates are now 2.5 years into not having any kind of elections, with parliamentary elections being planned to be held in the good old October of 2023. So, as a Ukrainian highly interested in politics and thus being really depressed by the lack of it, I want to help out my autism by doing some political stuff and help foreign folks around to understand what the hell is this thing called Ukrainian political parties, well, by explaining it. Before jumping in, I think it is first important explaining how does the system even work here and why the parties that exist currently the way they are. Long story short, populism. But if that long story is expanded, you will see that throughout all 33 years of independence, people have been constantly disappointed in the way parties are behaving, what are they bringing post-election and or while in the government. Ukraine wasn't always this paradise of populism, with each party rather building the political manifestos on the issues that are popular with the general populace. Up until 2014, it was still some kind of ideologically driven politics, but even then parties like Batkivshchina did crazy maneuvers like joining EPP instead of PES because they are more popular Europe-wide, despite Tymoshenko openly identifying herself as a social democrat. Nevertheless, the general discontent with political parties, as shown by pretty much every single poll on trust or institutions you will ever see, has political parties at the worst levels of support amongst many others. But our political life still exists and prospers, just not the usual European way. Anyway, jumping in, starting with the party of our Supreme Commander-in-Chief, Servant of the People, or Sluga Narodu in Ukrainian. A party out of all mentioned went through the most searches of some kind of identity or ideology for the past 5 years, and honestly, you've got to be there when the news were breaking out with party officials declaring new ideology each month or so. Though, it makes sense. When you got to assemble a party 2 months before election, between Zelensky's inauguration in May, where he dissolved the parliament, and a snap election in July. But now the party is officially centrist, according to the party's own website, and it is a member of various liberal international organizations like Alliance of Liberals and Democrats of Europe, though worth noting that some members of the Servant of the People in the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe are sitting in conservative groups, which shows how ideologically different the party is. SN is currently led by Lena Shulyak, who has been in charge since October 2021, when then leader Alexander Kornienko was elected deputy speaker of Verkhovna Rada. In 2019, party famously won a monomajority with 254 out of 424 openly contested seats, paving the way for the first ever one-party government without any coalition agreements needed whatsoever. Though, SN quickly gathered parliamentary groups out of MPs elected in single-member constituencies around itself, increasing its majority even more in theory by the local elections in 2020. Despite still coming first overall, party failed most expectations, being unable to win any major race, including Kiev mayoral election, where SN's candidate Irina Vereshchuk came just fifth with 5% of the vote. Nevertheless, in 2022, last polls before the invasion showed that SN would still fight for the first place with European solidarity, but now preparing for the coalition talks with other political forces. Which brings us to European Solidarity. The party of former President Petro Poroshenko is quite a typical European center-right party, following the ideas of Christian democracy, liberal conservatism, nominally, slightly conservative, pro-military, and hugely supportive of EU and NATO. Led by one and only former president, ES is a fifth incarnation of Poroshenko's political projects, originating from a party called Solidarity, which he formed back in 2001, leading up until 2013, and then again since 2019. Party's electorate went from somewhat regional in Vinnytsia, where Poroshenko ran, to nationwide as PPP, and now gathering support from Western oblasts as the party went fully hawkish, filling the empty spot left by nationalist forces. 2019 was a horrible year, but expected for ES, as the support of the former president went down heavily, so did the support of his force, coming fourth in the party list, voting behind opposition and Batkivshina. By 2022, European solidarity was polling much bigger, projected to lead the opposition by the next election, or even come in first place following the shenanigans over Poroshenko's court cases and unity of other center-right forces around the ES. Moving on, we have one of the most, if not the most, iconic political parties, Batkivshina, led by just as iconic politician Yulia Tymoshenko. And honestly, it is still a wonder for me as well as to what it represents. Throughout their 25-year history, Batkivshina went from a center-left party to a somewhat syncretic center-left on economics and right-wing on social issues. And as mentioned previously, it was a weird flip-flop made by Tymoshenko, despite her bloc being evidently center-left, consisting of Social Democrats and others. Nonetheless, Batkivshina was the third biggest party in 2019, capturing voters mostly in the central oblasts, elders and lower-class voters who remember good old times of Tymoshenko governments and how she worked for 3 years and who hate everything progressive, like gay marriage and marijuana. In 2022, Batkivshina didn't really lose or win a lot of support and was polling around 8 or 10%, certainly re-entering Rada for yet another convocation. Next up is Holos, and it is that rare moment of a party with a clear-set ideology, which is a tradition at this point, with Samopomich being dead in 8th Rada. Still, Holos is a liberal party led by Kira Rudik, who is also a vice president of Alliance of Liberals and Democrats of Europe. Holos is a young party as well, being founded in May 2019 by a famous singer Svetoslav Vakarchuk. It did get into parliament with 6% of the vote, but very quickly died in polls all 3 years until 2022, polling around 1 or 2%. Party famously tried to win over the Kyiv mayoral election with Serhiy Prytula coming in third, despite previously hoping for a second round with the incumbent mayor Vitaly Klitschko. Later, the same Prytula would indirectly lead the group of 11 deputies to split from Holos and form his own political force by March 2022. But the full-scale invasion saved Holos from collapsing completely as a party. Most likely, the party would fade into the irrelevancy after the next parliamentary election, being replaced by some another liberal force fighting to not die immediately after the election. And finally, the last parliamentary party, Opposition Platform for Life, formed in 2018 following the internal crisis within the opposition bloc. The party was led by the trio of Boyko, Rabinovich and Medvedchuk, and was yet another attempt to return the formerly powerful party of regions, but this time less charismatic and more Russophile. OPZH's main theme was left populism and peace in the East, as party was so eager to end the war they even met Putin, which caused outrage domestically. As the party unexpectedly came second overall in 2018, with 12% of the vote, other parties created this kind of cordon sanitaire on never cooperating with opposition. Still, opposition was growing in polls and won a bunch of local elections, mostly in eastern regions, but following the ban on Medvedchuk's affiliated channels, opposition's popularity started sinking down, and by 2022 was trailing behind Batkivshina, polling around 9%. After the invasion, the party was banned, as its members and leadership were accused of treason. Despite that, Boyko, who remained the only somewhat sane official, announced that he would form a group in Rada and later form a party, Platform for Life and Peace, as a successor of OPZH. Boyko wants to remain in politics post-war, with the fate of other deputies not affiliated with Boyko still unknown. That's it for the parliamentarian parties. There are still a lot of parties regionally, a lot of relevant parties previously represented in Rada, But I think that's a topic for another video, so yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope that this video helped at least somewhat better understand the parties here. Ciao.
А можна мені щось дати